All right, so I mentioned a little bit before about how I've been journaling more and how difficult it is and trying to talk about my emotions when very often, it's very taboo for men to talk about their emotions. So, um, I actually was talking with my coworkers about this, and we were kind of talking about it sarcastically, but one of the coworkers said that we should pull up one of the emotions wheel, like a feelings wheel. It's like what they give to kids in order for them to better express how they're feeling. So it's basically a wheel, and on the inside of the wheel, there's a bunch of like the basic emotions. I'm feeling bad. I'm feeling happy. I'm feeling nervous, like those basic emotions. And then on the outer layers, they get a little bit more specific. So it's used in order to like help you express how you're feeling. And it's given to literal children in order for them to like use their words about how they're feeling and not just use like the basic words like, oh, I feel bad, or like, oh, I feel or like I feel angry, stuff like that. They're able to use like more specific words, like instead of I'm happy, I feel delighted, appreciated, um, stuff like that. Anyway, we were using this wheel to talk about how we felt, and we were doing it kind of sarcastically, and doing like the therapist thing, like, oh, and how does it make you feel? How does that make you feel? Oh, how does that make you feel? Tell me a little bit more about that. Um, Basically using like therapist language, kind of like to joke around. But I do think that there's a lot to unpack about like male emotions and how most men don't talk about their emotions at all. Um, I do think it's funny when I talk about like journaling and trying to describe my emotions. I say it's like I'm working out a muscle that I've never worked out before. Um, and like my coworkers like kind of express the same sentiment, but I think it's funny that like the simile or the metaphor I use is literally an exercise. Like I'm talking about exercise, like physical exercise, when talking about my emotions. That's like the only way that I can even think about like describing it is through like manly workouts, working out a muscle I've never worked out before. Anyway, I just think it's funny. That's like the only way I even know how to express it is by talking about physical exercise. So I was thinking about that, and my coworkers were expressing more or less the same sentiment. Like, oh, whenever somebody asks me like how I feel about it, they would say like, I don't know. Like I was like, I don't even know like how I feel. I just say I don't know. And like, oh, my friend would keep on asking me how I felt, and I say I don't know, and they just say I'm retarded. Sorry, the R word throwing in there, but it wasn't my words, but that's what their friend would call my coworker. So, yeah, I mean, using that wheel, it's definitely, you know, even like when we're talking about our emotions, we're doing it in a way that is just like, men just don't go up like to other men and just be like, "Hey, how are you feeling?" So I went up to one of the male nurses, and I was like, "Hey, how are you feeling?" And he says, "I feel annoyed." And I said, "Oh, and like, what's making you feel annoyed?" He said, "Looking at your face is making me feel annoyed." I said, "Oh, so what about my face is making you feel annoyed?" Like trying to do like therapist talk. And he says, "Because your face looks like my nutsack." Anyway, I thought that was so funny, but it is like men do not go up to each other and say, "How do you feel? Let's talk about our feelings." So it was kind of funny to and go up to like all the people in the emergency department, the workers, and be like, "Hey, how are you feeling?" I don't know. I kind of just like saying stuff that makes people feel off put. So, like yesterday, it was International Women's Day, and I went up to all the female nurses, female staff in general, at the doctors as well. And I was like, hey, happy International Women's Day. Just trying my best to make them uncomfortable. And they were super uncomfortable with it. Some of them were like, I didn't even know it was International Women's Day. I said, dang. Come on. Anyway, that's talking about male emotions. I did see a very good video essay. It was titled, How Feminism Has Failed Men. I'll try to find the link and put it in the description. Hopefully I remember. But it's, I don't even remember the creator's name. I think it's Alexander Avila, but don't quote me on that. I'll find the link. And I'll put it in. But it basically talks about how this person is transgender. He was female to male, transition. And he said that when he was a woman, he, of course, like classic trans feelings, didn't feel comfortable in his own body. And when he transitioned, he felt a lot better about it, about his body and all that. But he also realized that nobody cares about male emotions. When he was a woman, it was like, oh, you can talk about your emotions and stuff, and people care about how you feel. But when you're a man, nobody cares how you feel, unless you feel anger. In which case, people care because you're toxic. You're a toxic male. Classic toxic masculinity. That's the one thing that, people do care about. The toxic masculinity traits. And they only care about it in a negative way. But, I mean, there's, a lot of things that go into men. People don't care about male emotions. So men stop feeling emotions. Except anger. Men still get angry because that's the one thing that men are allowed to be. Men are allowed to punch holes in walls. That's socially acceptable. One of my coworkers said, different one, that he loves punching a hole in the wall, and he's broken his hand before doing that. And one of the female coworkers was like, why would you do that? Why would you punch a hole in the wall? And he said, because it feels so good. No, I've never punched a hole in the wall before, but the conviction in his voice when he said it, I thought, man, I gotta start punching holes in the wall. Anyway, that's kind of this is one example. There's a million of them, especially in working in the emergency department. This is a very feelings suppressed field. We use sarcasm and humor all the time to suppress or cope with these emotions, and just trying to suppress it as much as we can. Anyway, yeah, I'll definitely try to find a link to the video about how feminism has failed men, which isn't just it's, I thought it was just one of those oh, clickbait title, this is just trying to trigger people. But it makes really good points about how male loneliness and stuff are very much not included in the feminism conversation. It's not just about uplifting women. A lot of ways feminism was about uplifting men, and find ways equality of the sexes means it means a lot more than just let's put women in the workplace. It's oh, let's also get men to talk about their emotions and not have girlfriends call their boyfriends pussies because they don't know how to express their emotions, Let's start using the emotion wheel, but let's be a little bit less sarcastic about it. All right, that's all I got. I'll see you guys tomorrow, my last day of work ever. Not really, but bye.